We have coming up this session around cultivating certainty, protective strategies for legal compliance and employee protection. And we started this afternoon by naming so many uncertainties that surround us and the role of workforce in building a culture, workforce benefits, and social bridging in cultivating certainty. And this session, we're going to focus on how leaders can build strong, defensible compliance practices that protect their organization, reduce legal risk, and support the day-to-day operations. Together, we will be exploring how compliance and psychological safety interacts to reduce fear-driven decision-making, maintains operational stability, and during periods of regulatory and so many other pressures. And joining us for this session, we're so pleased to have two speakers. We have starting with Peter Hales, who is the partner at Pierce at Wood LLP. Peter, a little bit about you before you jump into is Peter is an employment law attorney at Pierce at Wood, advising employers on wide range of workforce issues, including hiring, performance management, compliance, and litigation. And joining Peter is Paul Humiston, an associate federal immigration and national law at Vargaman, and I do apologize if I am doing any mispronunciations, but Ralph, we are so excited to have you. A little bit about Ralph is that he is an associate at the Boston office where he advises large corporation institutions on employee-based immigration as well as non-employee matters, and we're so pleased to have you both, and over to you.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you, Hamza, and the rest of the inclusivity team for having us. And as it was just mentioned, we will be discussing proactive strategies for legal compliance, employee protection. I do have my notes on another screen. Um, but one moment, I think we have a slideshow as well, if we can upload that. And then one thing I'll just note is that we will be sharing these slides as well for as a resource for the attendees. Um, just to kind of kick us off with a little bit more of an intro about the environment, and then I can kick it over to Pete as well, right? As was just mentioned on the previous panel, we have been seeing a lot of activity when it comes to federal engagement in the workforce, and that includes ICE raids here in Maine. I believe it was titled Project Catch of the Day at the time by ICE. And so the purpose of this panel and what we're here to discuss is how can an employer be proactive in setting up their processes? What are those kind of key compliance issues from hire to the end of that employment relationship that individuals can, within a corporation or company, can work with their employees to ensure that they have the steps in place, they're being compliant with all the proper federal and state regulations, and how can they facilitate a smooth or as smooth as possible engagement at their workplace, whether it's by state, local, or federal actors. Um, and so if we move on to uh, the first slide, I will actually turn it on over to Pete to kind of go over those first steps when it comes to hiring and compliance. So
Yeah, sure. The agenda of what we're going to talk about today, we're going to start talking about that compliance architecture is like getting people's paperwork in order, making sure that your records are complete and they're accurate. Next, we're going to talk about those government site visits. That's really a kind of a euphemism from what we've had experienced around here. Um, but mainly what I want to go through is just, ICE shows up on your doorstep. What do we do? Um, how do we create a framework that makes people feel comfortable and makes people feel like, yeah, we know what we're going to do. We're prepared. we're confident, we know the system, we have policies and protocols in place. And then kind of dovetailing off of that is supporting employee populations.
Yeah. As was just mentioned by Pete, right? When it comes to those kind of establishing compliance architecture, many individuals know, and when you hiring managers or HR know that, you must complete Form I-9, right? That's the employment verification document that is required to be completed when hiring an individual. We included the hyperlink. There's a really, believe it or not, helpful source from the government called the M274 Handbook for Employers that can answer basic questions when it comes to completion of the Form I-9. Retention of those documents believe it or not, extend beyond the employment relationship with the individual. So, as stated on the slide, it's 3 years after date of hire or 1 year after employment ends for each I-9 completed. And then, additionally, when hiring individuals who are foreign nationals, so that's anyone that is not a U.S. citizen or lawful permanent resident or anecdotally a green card holder, right? There's actually additional steps in that compliance architecture. Specific visa classifications require additional public access files or practical training guidelines that must be retained at both potentially HQ or even the work site where the individual is employed at. Um, and so it's really important when hiring, whether it's a US citizen, a lawful permanent resident, a foreign national, right, that you're working as an employer to understand your compliance regulations, how to properly complete these forms, and ensure that you're properly retaining these documents as any of these, if violated in the retention, could stem either with direct impacts to your employees, but also from a company's perspective, can result in significant fines if not maintaining these documents. Um, and so going down a little bit further as we kind of look at this in our time from a high level view, right? I always am and talking with my clients about what are the questions you need to ask about the paperwork and whether or not that paperwork changes, right? So oh, is someone moving a work site location? Do we need to update our documents, right? Um, Great, it's January. We just went through our annual promotion cycle. Are they being promoted from a technical position to a managerial position? Could that also impact either their foreign national work authorization or even their paperworks that we have to retain with the government, right? And then one that is I've seen across my clients as well, both those located here in Maine, where I'm based, as well as nationally, right, is those relationship with your end clients or field sites, right? Thinking about the classic example of a consultant that's being placed at an end client to do work there, right? What are those compliance, and are they meeting both your compliance as well as the agreements that you have with your end clients? And so a lot of people think that, the I-9 is that first step. You hire someone, they're validated, they have work authorization, they're good to hit the road. And for a large part, that is true. But then, it's always kind of that um, responsibility of an employer to maintain and think about, okay, so what now? Are we still compliant? 1 year down the road, are we keeping up with our paperwork? Are the right boxes being checked and the documents being retained? And so by creating that compliance architecture, right from the get-go, when you're hiring someone, it just makes this overall administrative burden on employers much easier to manage, whether you're a 10,000 multinational company or a startup right here in Portland. Um, yeah, I'm not sure if there was anything else, Pete, if you wanted to mention about I-9 or we can move on.
Yeah, the only comment I have with I-9 is just the and Ralph can attest to this, like making sure that those things are filled out to the T.
Mhm.
Because I don't remember what the fine is. I think it's like is it more than $1,000 per error? And that's like an error could mean like, oh, whoops, I forgot to, check this box, like, or I forgot to put the full date or
Mhm.
something. I mean, it's just so strict. The financial penalties are really significant. So it's really important to do audits of these regularly, like Ralph said.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Okay. Um, Move to the next slide. Um, okay, so now you've hired, right? We've kind of gone over that document retention. When it comes to what is the compliance architecture for, right? And it was briefly mentioned about the idea of the ICE raids, but believe it or not, there's actually many different kinds of inspections or site visits that can be conducted by the U.S. government across both the Department of Labor as well as um, U.S. Immigration Services, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, excuse me, and the greater Department of Homeland Security, which kind of oversees all immigration agencies. And so why we wanted to include these is because, in particular, when you're hiring a foreign national, there is a just a greater amount of touch points those employers and those work sites are going to have with the government, given the kind of intensive application and work authorization regulatory scheme that you are participating in when hiring a foreign national. And so the types of government site visits aren't always going to be, frankly, what we see on the news. And, that is, I would argue that that's actually a good thing, right? Not every site visit is going to be an ICE raid. They can be as innocuous as an I-9 audit. That is where the government is coming in. They're checking to make sure your I-9s are done completely. That is where they would kind of potentially find a violation or a deficiency in your I-9 records, leading to those nasty fines, as Pete mentioned. And I do believe they are right now, it's about between 500 and $1,000, depending on the error. Um, there is a STEM OPT worksite inspection, and just very briefly, what that is when you think about hiring, for instance, let's say a summer intern or a college new grad, if they're a foreign national, they potentially can have work authorization for that kind of transition from academics to a more stable visa pathway. And so there are times when the government is coming to check in. Are they completing work that is in line with their degree? Is there a work study plan that is signed by the government, or excuse me, by the employer and the individual, compliant, right? So essentially, if they were just finished a mechanical engineering degree and they're coming here to work at your company on, let's say, mechanical engineering designs, right? And then all of a sudden they got shifted over into like CAD drafting or computer assisted drafting of civil engineering designs. Probably wouldn't happen, but let's say it does, right? Is that going to be compliant with their work plan? And so those are the kinds of visions or optics that the DHS would be looking for in a STEM OPT worksite. There's the public access files inspection, which for certain visa pathways where you're required to have a labor certification application that technically, based on the law, have to be open to the public. Now, I will be very honest. I can't think of one time I've ever seen a public individual go into, let's say a big employer and say, "Hey, I'd like to see your PAPs." But in theory, it could happen. It's a lot permitted based on the law. And so it's important that, you're prepared for those kind of inspections. And then the last two are really the ones that get the most visibility. in what I would consider mainstream media. And the first one is the fraud detection and national security inspections. That's where you're seeing the FDNS agents coming in. They're checking to see, hey, is this person you have a visa for? Are they working here? Are they doing the job that's in the petition? Are they being compliant? And they generally have quite broad authority, which was actually expanded upon under the prior administration to go and inspect those work sites. They have the authority to go and talk to an individual at their desk, at the field site, even at an end client site to make sure that they're working compliant with their petitions. And then the third one that I won't go into too much, um, we'll be discussing it a little bit more in length in a few moments. But is the ICE worksite raid. And from an immigration perspective, right, when we see these, it falls into two categories. One, it is ICE on an exploratory mission for a particular individual, right? So they have a notice to appear or removal order for a particular employee. They're looking for that employee at their work site. Or the other one is when ICE is going for the work site itself, where they're going to an employer. Um, I think famously, there in Maine, several years back, there was an ICE raid about a chicken farm in northern Maine, up in the county. And in that situation, they were going to the work site to check that it was compliant, that there were individuals who were maybe working there without work authorization, and they're really going in on a search mission, to be honest. And so, with all of these different types of site visits, there's a broad variety of ways to handle where you're balancing protecting your employees' safety, your own safety, and also ensuring you're facilitating a compliant and smooth visit. And so before I kick it over, just really briefly to go over how to prepare, right? What's really important is always having that established SOP or procedure document where you are able to, have step by steps in place. When an agent shows up, what is the first thing you're doing, right? And importantly, with that same example, is making sure that the relevant staff has reviewed the SOP, right? I think a lot of times, myself included, we jump to creating the structure and then we kind of say, okay, we're good here, right? Forgetting that there's actual people that need to read it, right? And so it's important that those players within your company are familiar with the operating procedures, the SOPs, so that they can assist and facilitate these visits. Similarly, it's always beneficial when creating these documents to identify a single point of contact at each work site, right? So it's really great to kind of have a point person at HQ, but practically speaking, you'll want to have identified people at all of your work sites as well, so that if an agent shows up at, let's say, your an office in Bar Harbor and your HQ is down here in Portland or South Portland, where I live, that person on the work site in Bar Harbor knows what to do, right? They're not waiting to call you down at HQ to tell them step by step. They have a little bit of an understanding. And then just highlighting a point I had previously mentioned, similarly, it's really important to coordinate with either your vendors or even like end client work sites where you will have your own employees stationed at third parties, because while technically it is a third party work site, right? It's not your company's office. Government site visits can go to these third parties to ask about your employees. And so it's always important to have an open communication or at least a touch point so that the end clients know what to do if someone is showing up at their office asking about an employee of your company. And then always, and I know it's um, probably beating a dead horse, but it's always great to do your own internal compliance checks, always maybe once a year, every couple of years, just to make sure that your documents are up to snuff and that you are prepared in the case of one of these random or even scheduled visits.
All right.
I think we can go
Next
to
slide.
yeah, I'll turn it over to you, Pete.
Cool. Okay, I'm going to talk really quick about, I think the number one thing that Ralph said is these SOPs, these policies about what to do. That is so critical. I'm going to go through really quick. If these government agents show up in your lobby, if ICE conducts a raid at your workplace, what do you do? And this is going to be extremely high level. I know we only have about 10 minutes left. I will note there is a breakout session on Friday that I'm also going to be a part of where we're going to talk about this stuff then. So we'll get into it in more detail and we'll take questions and everything. Um, but there are going to be a few high level things that I'm going to talk about in the next 10 minutes. And that is primarily the biggest things you want to know when ICE shows up on your doorstep is not consenting to search, absent judicial warrants, staying calm, treating them in a professional manner, keeping arm's length, and then documenting. I would say document as much as you can. Get people educated about this. So when they first show up in your lobby, remain calm, treat them in a professional manner. I mean, we're all at this conference, and right now, um, people have very strong feelings about ICE agents, and they have very strong feelings about the fact of, there's articles about how much training they go through and the uniforms or lack thereof, and that they're illegitimate and everything. We have to treat them in a professional manner to avoid escalation. And if we want to keep a safe and stable workforce, we have to put those thoughts and opinions aside when we're at the workplace. When they first show up, ask for their identification. This is a critical, critical point. They need to give you their identification. Ask them to wait in a public area. Do not consent to allow them into private areas at the workplace. You need to communicate that you're not consenting to that and are not authorized to let them in the building until someone can get in touch with whoever the point of contact is that you've designated, absent a judicial warrant. Next slide. Next thing, if ICE shows up on your doorstep, you contact that point of contact that you have. If you have an attorney, you need to contact them immediately. Okay, they'll know what to do. They'll walk you through it. I'm an employment lawyer. I'm not a criminal lawyer, but I work with people at my firm who have worked at the DOJ for decades, have worked in criminal law for decades, will know exactly what to do. They work in immigration. Like we have the resources to get you what you need and give you the advice that you need. Do not get in the way of the agents. If they insist being there, or are able to get in, even if you're saying I don't consent, even if you and your people do everything you're supposed to do. There are stories across the country about ICE doing what they're not supposed to do. And the key is stay at arm's length. Don't impede. Don't try to force them to do something that they're not wanting to do. Don't try to force them from accessing the property. Keep saying that you don't have consent absent a judicial warrant and stay at arm's length. The key here is not to escalate, but to document and try and get everything in a position so that if we need to make any legal challenges or do anything, we have our ducks in a row. Okay. What is a judicial warrant? It's a warrant that's signed and dated by a federal judge with the judge's full name. Okay, there aren't a ton of federal judges in Maine. Okay, so there are only going to be a few. If you're not sure what it is, you tell the agent that you need to contact your lawyer. You tell the agent that, and you get your lawyer on the phone ASAP. Okay, take a photo of whatever's presented, make a copy, and then provide it to your attorney. Okay, this is going to be happening a lot, taking photos, asking for copies, things like that. Do the best that you can with what you have. Again, the key here, stay at arm's length, don't impede them, but document and keep making the same statements. Absent a judicial warrant, you don't consent to a search. And also, let me go contact my attorney. Next slide. Again, stay at arm's length. That's the really important thing here. So, what are we documenting when they show up and your point of contact is contacted? They show up. What are we documenting? We're documenting agent information, name, badge number, etc. If they go in and search, if they do have a warrant and have the right to come in and search, or if they basically forcibly come onto your premises and go in private areas and search, document what areas are searched, document what they've provided for documentation. If they show you something, ask to copy it or take a photo of it. If they don't, note the number of agents, what they're wearing, what they look like, who they spoke with. Okay? And don't provide any substantive statements without consulting counsel first. Okay? If they start asking you substantive questions, ask that you want to talk to counsel first. Period. End of story. If they prevent you a search warrant, you should limit them to the areas only described to the areas on the warrant. Don't let them wander freely among within the workplace. Again, using that language about not consenting to the search and then making sure that they're accompanied at all times. Somebody is with them and somebody is repeating that statement that if they're going into places they're not authorized to go, that you don't consent to that, or you're not authorized to consent to that. If they show you the arrest warrant, in other words, if they have a warrant that says we have a right to come and take this person and arrest them, walk them to the individual, passing as few people as possible. Again, we're looking to keep people calm. We're looking to keep this as streamlined a process as possible. And again, we'll go through it and answer questions, and we'll talk more about what all this looks like on Friday. We have a lot of time. We have other panelists who can weigh into. Next slide. So more about documentation. If they show up, what else are we doing? We're making a list of documents or items seized during a visit. Ask them for an inventory. They may not provide it to you, but ask them for it. Okay? What if they ask to interview employees? What if ICE shows up and they start talking to people? What do? You contact your attorneys immediately before any questioning of employees takes place. Okay, don't hide them, don't assist them leaving premises. If they ask to interview employees, the employees don't have to talk to the ICE agents. Okay, they're not obligated to answer any questions. So they could easily respond by saying, I'm not comfortable answering your questions. I don't want to answer your questions. I want to have my attorney here before I answer any questions. Okay, right away do that. Follow their instructions though, okay? Document everything. Don't push back. Don't try to, basically don't try to be a hero while they're there. That's what attorneys are for. That's what documenting is for. That's what the court system is for. Okay? We don't want people getting hurt. We don't want the work site getting disrupted. We don't want employees feeling unsafe. If anyone is detained, ask for contact information and where they will be taken so that you can contact the families and contact the employee's emergency contact ASAP. Again, it's possible they don't provide this stuff. Okay. We've heard all these stories about ICE not complying with a lot of constitutional obligations. We still have to ask the questions, and we still have to treat this as though, listen, we are going to follow the law. We're going to document what we need to so we can challenge whatever we need to challenge in court if necessary.
Mhm.
And if it's possible, photograph the agent's vehicle. Real quick, just have a couple quick slides just to wrap up. This is like, as I said, this is very high level. We have a really good panel set up for Friday, but basically, what's the purpose of this? Why are we doing? We want to support foreign national employees, and it means that we understand our compliance procedures, compliance requirements, that is. So how do we make this So if ICE does show up, we can respond in a safe, responsible, and prepared way. We document, we have protocols, and if you don't have protocols in place, you can work with counsel. They can put them together with you. You identify individuals who will be those points of contact, and you train your employees. Just like Ralph said earlier, it's okay. A lot of us, it's like we put our policies in place, we have people sign off at hire, and then it's kind of a set it and forget it. With this kind of thing, because tensions are very high, and there is the potential for people to get in trouble or to get hurt, it is critical that even a 30-minute training takes place so that people understand here are the policies in place and here are the most important pieces.
No, absolutely. And one final thing I'll add to that, Pete, is really how does all of this again support your employees, right? And the one that stands out to me and the one that I really work on with my clients is maintaining what we call a source of truth. And that's because as everyone here can probably attest to, right, there's thousands of different opinions, of different actions to take. You see one thing on the news, you go on to X, it says another thing. And so being there and available to answer and receive questions from your employees not only lets them know that they're supported and safe in their place of work, but it also distills a lot of misinformation. And you very well don't have to have all of those answers, right? But you can serve as that focus point so that you can get the answer from a validated source of truth, whether that is your in-house counsel, external counsel, etc., right? But that's really what is important in ensuring that you're supporting your workers is not always having the exact answer immediately, but being a trusted source for information when it's necessary. Um, yeah, and I know we went a little over. As Pete mentioned, he'll be there on Friday to keep the conversation going. And then otherwise, it was a pleasure speaking with everyone today.
Likewise.